Hi there. Today is Sunday, March 20th. Happy spring, which makes this the week 11 Create Brilliance 2022 podcast update. I almost said return to creativity. Well, I said it for a whole year. Of course it's still a little stuck on that one. How are y'all doing? Jumping right in. I this has been a busy week. This was one of those weeks that was high on person-to-person contact and kind of made, had me feeling a little drained by the end of the week. Um, but this is just the way it goes some weeks. For instance, Monday I had a book club that not only, was I just attending the book club, I was actually leading the discussion, which don't get me wrong, I enjoyed thoroughly because I thoroughly enjoyed the book we were reading, which is The Confessions of Franny Langton. And it was really interesting. Now, when I originally proposed the book to the club, the library description described it as it was a slave narrative, but it took place in Jamaica and London, so it's a little off the beaten path of most of the ones that we read, especially here in the South. But it was also um, there was a mystery element that was hyped. Yeah, at the end of the novel? Well, yes, there were some mystery-like elements. It was not a mystery. It was more appropriately described on the author's own website as a gothic romance between a Jamaican maid and her French mistress. So, yeah, in late 19th century London, or early 19th century London, rather. So yeah, little bit of a disconnect between the two descriptions, but that's okay. It was a beautifully written book, and I encourage anyone to read it for that reason alone. Um, that being said, so yeah, that was Monday. Tuesday, a doctor's appointment. Bleh. Who likes those, right? Who likes those? The upside is that I did get to talk to my doctor about adjusting some of my meds. So I'm still not able to see my therapist yet because that whole mess is still going on. But still plugging away at it. But at least I was able to get in and in the midst, amongst everything else we were discussing at my annual checkup, I said, "Hey, by the way, I don't think these are working the way they were before." So yeah, we bumped them up slightly, and so we'll see how that works. And then Wednesday, I had an interview at my local yarn shop, Fuzzy Goat. They are hiring a part-time associate, and I want to be it. So I think, it's always hard to tell, but I mean, I think the interview went well, but whether or not I fit the slot that they're looking to fill, you know, still waiting to hear. Um, but like I said, I think it went well, and for you just do the best you can. If I get the position, it would be 12 hours a week, I think is what it is right now. Tuesdays, Saturdays, and one other, day in the week. But not super long shifts, nothing that was going to negatively impact the amount of time that I have to work on my own stuff, which was like a super plus. Not to mention, it's in an amazing yarn shop that I love to be there as a customer. Um, but the atmosphere and stuff that they create there is just phenomenal, and yeah, I always said that if I ever had the opportunity, to work there, I'd jump at it. So here's me jumping. So yeah, so that was Wednesday, and then Thursday and Friday I was pretty zapped, although kept up with what I was doing. Worked on the coloring book. I got 4 more pages completed for the coloring book, so I'm probably going to continue working on that through to the end of the month. See how much more I can get done. May not come out till April. I wanted it to come out in February, March. Eh, time happens. I've also been writing. I'm nearing the end of the first act. I follow kind of or I've been attempting to follow kind of a loose structural guide. It's not without being formulaic. There are story beats and there are things that need to happen in certain times to keep the story moving and so on and so forth. So I use one that's based on like a four-act structure. Um, and so I am nearing the end of that first act. I'm right on point with the word count. So it's going well. It's going well, and I'm much happier with the mystery element that was like actually the third version that I had considered. So all's well. Um, I was also working more on the copywriting course, and so those were like ongoing things. But this week I got back to painting, and the reason why I got back to painting was because Todd's birthday was yesterday. Yay! And he's not like really huge on birthdays and stuff. He lets me celebrate his birthday with him, but he's not like into big parties. He's not big into like big showy things. But because I had been doing the pet portraits, I knew early on, I was like, yeah, I'm going to paint Duncan for him. Because, he loves his doggy. And so I did. And I think it's probably one of I get better each time. You know, practice makes proficiency. Practice does not make perfection. Perfect practice makes for perfect, execution. But practice just makes proficiency. And that's okay. But I'm really happy with the way it turned out. And I'm going to show you. Boop. There he is. There's the little fuzzy face. And no, I was really happy at how this pet portrait came out, and I like especially pleased with like his eye and everything. It's like I think I really did a good job on that, and his shoulders and body look a little odd in this one because I managed to get a photo of him, a good photo from, this like looking up at him angle, which considering he's a bit of a low rider, that's not happening very often, but he was in the when we went up to Kentucky for Thanksgiving, and we had stopped at a rest area or for gas or something. I don't remember. But he was standing, out the back window, kind of, looking around. And I happened to get this pose, and it was the perfect one to paint. But he was wearing a harness, and I didn't really want the harness in the photo. So some of the body shape, like where his skin is rolling over on the shoulders, is because of where the way the harness fits around, because facets have all that loose skin. And yeah, so the more I look at it, the more I see like, oh, bodybuilder. But suffice it to say, it's done. But no, I was really happy with the way it turned out, and so was Todd, which is the most important thing. Um, I will also be very likely entering that portrait into for putting it up for consideration for the juried art show, where the deadline is to submit is next month, a little under a month away on April 15th, with the Tom Collective. So yes, yeah, Todd's gonna loan it to me to put it in the exhibition. It will not be for sale. That's also the giraffe project, which I need to get back to. One of his little ossicones had he had a tumble and one of his little ossicones broke, so I have to repair that. But yeah, I need to get to the fabric portion of that. And then I also did some more painting because I had one more pet portrait already, planned that I still hadn't gotten to, and I hadn't gotten to it because it includes 5 animals, and that was felt like a lot. So yes, I procrastinated. But I've finally gotten started on it. So I've got the first two, and poor Crystal here. She's so I think she was a retriever. I think golden retriever. I'm so not always great with dog breeds, but she's like light and honey colored, and so she's very close to the background here. Once I put in the wash background, after I get everything else painted, she'll stand out a little bit more. But then yes, and then this is their kitty baby. This is the first cat I've painted, and I gotta say that I'm I'm pretty happy with it. I didn't know how, it's like I felt like I was good with dogs for the most part, but cats, yeah, they're something else. So, anyway, so I've got that going. I'm trying to get that done, and then I can get everybody, who these portraits are for, get them sent out and that'll be one big thing off my to-do list. I also might be opening up to commissions for pet portraits. It's a really scary thing to do. Because these are gifts, so there's like no pressure. Commissions pressure. Um, but um, that's just kind of the way it is. But yeah, entering Duncan's portrait into the gallery show would probably be the most on-brand thing I've done for the area. Not necessarily for me, for the area, because this is, very, we're a city, but we're in a rural community, and it's very sportsman, the sporting life. So dogs, ducks, hunting scenes, nature, yeah. Um which is not what most of my work centers around. Gotta say. But anyway, so yeah, I was just thinking, I was like, this one might be the most on brand thing I've done. Anyway, so that leads us to what else is going on and our brilliance, our bit of brilliance here. Yes, if you watched last week's video, week 10 update, then you will remember that I had a brilliance is in mind, and then forgotten it, only to remember it as I was in the midst of explaining the one that I had come up with. And so I wrote it down so I know what this week's is. This week's brilliance is perspective. Or this week brilliance is perspective. Let me tell you what I mean by that. There's a lot of different ways of perspective. In our society, most of the time when we are told to keep things in perspective, I feel like we're being told to stifle our emotions. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, you're having like this meltdown, you're having this crisis, and they're like, yeah, but people have it so much worse. They're offering perspective, but here's the thing: perspective doesn't mean that your stuff doesn't matter. Okay? If you are having a shitty day, you are allowed to feel however you feel about that shitty day, whether it's angry, or frustrated, or sad, whatever, insert whatever applicable emotion. Perspective doesn't negate your reality. Okay? So don't don't do that to yourself too. I know, we all do that to an extent. Take, for instance, the very real, shit show that's going on with Russia and Ukraine right now. And a lot of people are justifiably concerned and wondering what that's going to mean for the rest of, the world. And, we saw gas prices go sky high, even though, you know, our oil does not apparently come from, largely from Russia, but there are other impacts, it's like overall supply and demand. And, I think the stock market had a bit of a wobble, if I remember correctly. I don't follow that closely. Um, there's people who are worried about family in those areas, or not even family, but just the human beings, and what this could mean for the world, because there are repercussions and we don't know how it's all going to shake out. But just because someone is dealing with shelling going on in their country, or invasions or battles, doesn't mean that you don't get to feel some kind of way about your own situation, is the point here. Um, and sometimes that's really tough. I admit that I have been putting off sending out my March newsletter for my readers list because ugh, it just feels so tone deaf to send out a happy perky message about, oh hey, there's a new coloring page up on the freebies link, and you know this is going on with this book, and this is what's coming next, and kind of thing. And at the same time, if we concentrate only on the negative, then what kind of quality of life are we giving ourselves? So some people, myself included, have, might hang back in a situation like that, so as not to be tone deaf. Whereas others will still send it out because they know that they're providing a little bit of light in the darkness, and that's just as valid. And I wish I could kind of get over myself, my own issues to do that. There's other things. That's not the only reason why I haven't sent out the March newsletter. Um, I'm also having some technical difficulties with that page. Trying to get the PDF uploaded to where you know, there's some issues. I'm like, I've done this 2 months before. I've done this with other files before that. What is going on? I don't know. I'm still figuring it out. There's some kind of weird thing going on. It's not uploading right. Anyway, anyway, um, point being is that that's a matter of perspective. Um, when you are struggling, um, other people will have it worse, and other people may have it better. And so, where you put yourself on that spectrum, that bell curve, that whatever, yes, okay, that's perspective, but also know and acknowledge what you're doing, what you're trying to do, what you are accomplishing. For me, I thought I would be farther along on a lot of things by this point. Um, and I'm not. So my bit of perspective is remembering that progress isn't linear, that there are steps back. Um, and then you just, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or 3 steps back sometimes. And then you just keep going forward again. Um, but it's all a matter of perspective. And there's the perspective of comparing situations, which is dangerous to psyche at times. But there's also perspective in how you look at things. That's the other side of perspective. Perspective is how you look at things. So in the interview this past week, I was asked to rate myself on a scale of 1 to 10 on how lucky I was. At first, I was like, "No, I'm not really that lucky. I don't win, raffles or lotteries or, stuff like that very often. I'm not, I don't feel lucky." But then before I answered, thank goodness, because, I was doing an amazingly well job for me of saying, let me think about that, and considering my answer before just starting to talk. They may not have known that that was like that's a major improvement for me, but I know it was. Um, so I thought about it and I'm like, there was a time in my life, mid-20s, where I used to say that my guardian angels were like getting overtime and hazard pay because I was making some very questionable decisions. Not as questionable as some, again, perspective, but yeah, I was making some questionable choices and decisions, and things could have been a lot. I could have, ooh, I could have gotten myself into some real trouble, but I didn't. Um, Growing up, I had some really crappy things happen to me as a child, and I say happen to me instead of being an active participant, because when you're a child, that's like one of the few times, um, for the average person when it really is, it's happening to you, not, your decisions. Whereas in my 20s, I was making choices. they were what they were, but I own my part of it. Um, but then I thought about how I lucked into my first career. I didn't set out to be a bookkeeper, but I kind of tumbled into that career and I was good at it and it provided well for me for 25 years. And then I thought about how lucky I am, how privileged I am to be able to quit that job, end that career, and follow my goals and desires to try and create a new career for myself as a full-time writer and artist. And yes, it's hard. I know I didn't luck into instant success, but I'm lucky to have the opportunity. I'm fortunate enough to have the opportunity. So, I processed that all, I think, relatively quickly. And and so I had to rate myself as a solid 8 out of 10 as far as being a lucky person, because I realized that when I gave it the proper perspective, yeah, I have been really lucky. And I need to acknowledge that. Bad stuff still happens. Struggle is still part of it. But yeah, I've been pretty lucky, all things considered. And I did offer a little bit of explanation. I was like, I wouldn't have normally, automatically, I wouldn't have said that. But when I think about, things that happened that could have been worse, or my current situation of being able to follow my dreams, absolutely. I'm a lot luckier than I would have thought. And yeah. Now, what that interview question told them about me, in relation to everything that they're looking for, I don't know. I mean, it was an interview full of these, more like character style questions than um than work experience, like direct, day-to-day work stuff. And I thought it was really interesting and it was a really neat interview. Um because it was, a little unconventional. Now, granted, I don't know, maybe this is more common than I'm aware of, because I tend to, I really haven't done that many interviews. Again, I've been fortunate enough to have, like, you know, chunks of time at different places. Um, but yeah, it was really interesting. Anyway, so perspective, getting back on track, perspective is important. And yes, sometimes perspective can take us down out of our, is myopic the right word? Out of, we can't be super self-centered all the time. I mean, there is a time to be reflective and engage in self-care, and self-care is not selfish. And then there are times when we can, as human beings, we might be a little selfish. And so perspective can kind of help us work our way out of that. But perspective is not a tool, it's not a weapon to be used against our very natural and very, very human feelings. So maybe perspective is a double-edged sword. I don't know. But perspective is also how we look at things. And when we keep that perspective in mind, then perhaps it does help us tap into our brilliance a little bit better, a little bit easier. Um, whether it's acknowledging the benefits we have in this world, or acknowledging the suffering of someone else and trying to do something about it. However, your perspective helps you be a better you. That's all. That's what we're looking for. That's what I mean by showing the world your brilliance. Creating brilliance out in the world. Yes, part of it is the 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 physical, creativity of, like, painting or writing, or whatever. Um but also creating the world we want to live in is just as important. So when I say create brilliance, however we're doing that, whatever we're doing to create brilliance in ourselves and in the world around us. That's what I mean. So use that perspective to better both. And remember, you can't pour from an empty cup. So you have to recognize your own brilliance before you can help other people to find theirs. So, with that said, I will go ahead and close out this video. Enjoy the coming week ahead, if at all possible. Let's all try and keep things in perspective, the highs and the lows. And yeah, don't be afraid to show the world your brilliance.